Mainstream media praising President Biden for visiting Ukraine. Joining us right now to talk about that, former New York City Commissioner Giuliani and Bloomberg administration's Brian Anderson, host of Money Talk with Melanie, Collette, Florida businessman, lawyer, GOP strategist, Ford O'Connell. So I'm going to start with this. Some critics, such as Newsmax's Benny Johnson, aren't so thrilled with what the president has done. In fact, asking the question, visited Ukraine before the war zone in East Palestine, Ohio, just an hour from D.C. I don't know if that's by air that Benny's talking about, but certainly closer than Ukraine. Melanie, how do you take this? I mean, it really seems to be a tin ear. I don't know if that's the right analogy, but a lot of people hurting there.
I have to tell you, there is nothing that made me more angry than when I read that President Biden was in Ukraine. I do feel for the people of Ukraine who are affected by this war, but I certainly feel much more for those American citizens in Ohio that are suffering and have this level of uncertainty about their health, their well-being, about their property, and President Biden does not have a moment of time for them, nor does the Secretary of Transportation. Like, the government is failing our own people, but you're over in Ukraine taking care of them. It is maddening.
Yeah, and then you have FEMA saying, well, you know, there's damage there, but it's not like a tornado or a hurricane. And then Mr. Trump says, we're going to go visit, and suddenly, Ford, well, maybe you do have some damage we can help you with.
That's exactly right. Look, Donald Trump did the right thing here. He is bringing media attention and political attention from the White House to the disaster in Ohio, where, frankly, a lot of Democrats don't want to talk about Ohio because it doesn't fit their narrative and because it's a working-class white community. The elites in Washington, D.C. don't care about it. I have to agree with Melanie. This is typical Joe Biden. Joe Biden is more interested in defending the borders of Ukraine than he is the borders of the United States, whether it's a disaster in Ohio, whether it's fentanyl, whether it's illegal immigration. This is who the Democratic Party is.
Okay, let's talk this. New York guy, Brian Anderson. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was in Staten Island this morning at a law enforcement event. Not everybody's a fan. New York City Mayor Eric Adams, among them, sarcastically welcoming the governor and offering to teach him something about values while he's here. Brian, your thoughts?
Oh, where do I go with that? At least Governor DeSantis is doing something that Joe Biden isn't doing. He's coming to a high-crime city to point out what they can do for the citizens of our city and the citizens of our country. Because we're suffering a lot of gun violence. That's all we hear about when you report about America. And now we've got one guy that not only does something about it, but he's looking around to see how we can help other places. And Mayor Adams, that was his comment? I've got no words for that.
Yeah, and Melanie, it's interesting. We don't have a soundbite here. We did play it earlier in the hour. But Mr. DeSantis talking about crime being so bad in New York, yet crime in Florida has improved. The rates have improved. And he's saying it's because we stand behind our cops and we want to hold criminals responsible. In other words, a lot of things that we talk on this network about every single day.
Exactly. And let's talk about the fact that everything that Eric Adams put in that tweet was an absolute lie. They were not banning books. They were not discriminating against the LGBTQ community. None of that happened. And it's typical of what people on the left tend to do is completely lie about the policies and bastardize the laws and say that there are something that they are not. It is irritating that they do that. When if anybody looked at the laws that they're talking about and peeled back the onion, they would know that it was not discrimination. Protecting our nation's children is not discrimination.
Now, Brian, there's a saying that every senator looks in the mirror and sees a president. And I feel like Eric Adams thinks that if you're mayor of New York, you have a chance to be president. It didn't work out that well for de Blasio. But do you get the feeling that he's angling for something bigger when he takes shots at somebody like the governor?
Well, he'd have a better shot at it if he actually did something that, you know, people could agree on.
Exactly.
Exactly. He's shipping migrants up to Canada, but he doesn't see the parallels with, you know, the migrants coming from Texas, and he criticizes the governor there, but he does the same thing. I don't know. He's going to have to do a lot better than that.
Yeah, Ford, give me your take on the governor going to Staten Island. He did have a funny comment saying, is this Florida North, or I'm paraphrasing here, or is Florida New York South? You know, there's no reason for him to go to Staten Island unless he's running for president. Am I right?
Well, there's no question about it. He is running for president, but he's also talking about an issue, whether it's Chicago, Philadelphia, or Staten Island, that concerns a lot of Republicans. Yep. And to your point, in Staten Island, I believe that's actually the area of New York where most people fled to Florida per capita in the state of New York. So you know what? He's once again showing himself to be America's governor, and he knows that the blueprint forward to get a lot of independent leaders is to focus on crime.
All right, Brian, Melanie, Ford, if you will stick around, please.